Welcome, ladies and gents. Chris Andre here. You can find me at BetBoxing on Twitter. Or of course, you can subscribe to the channel. Let's talk boxing. If the camera collapses, bear with me. I'll pick it back up. It's wobbling all over the place. Let's talk boxing and let's talk about Ryan Garcia. He just put in a devastating performance against Javier Fortuna. But you guys know that on this channel, we do not cheerlead. We don't hate on any fighters either. We will praise them all, but we'll also be criticizing certain things that perhaps need improvement. The way we try to analyze here is to say, okay, if I was to fight this guy or if I was to train someone to fight this guy, how do I go about getting the better of him? Because every fighter has consistent patterns that can be exploited and many fighters have errors that they make, no matter how good they are, no matter where they are on a pound for pound list, for instance. So there's no hate in here, but as good as Ryan looked, as devastating as he looked, there are some problems. There are some errors there, as particularly against a guy whose style is like Tank Davis's. He could come unstuck, and he must address this if that fight is to happen next. First and foremost, before we get to the weakness, let's talk about some of the strengths. The lead left hand is absolutely fantastic. He's got a brilliant left hook, which almost looks like a slap, but it's got power on it. When it's a long left hook, he throws it around the guard. So if you try to narrow your guard, bring it in front of your face, he'll find the gap around it. If you don't, and you're in range, he'll drop a powerful jab. He'll often offer you a high guard as bait. He'll sit there, lean his weight onto his front foot as bait. You decide to try and commit to a shot. He'll shift his weight to his back foot. He'll step back and throw a wide left hook to time you on your way in. That's one of his best punches. That's when you try to launch into Ryan Garcia, you are in danger. He can also shape up to throw the left hook to the head, and instead he goes downstairs to the body, and it really is a devastating shot, right? Ask Luke Campbell, ask Javier Fortuna now. He's a very dangerous dude with that lead hand. When it comes to the backhand, however, there are some problems with that right hand. It's the method in which he delivers the right hand. Now, one of the problems is, in the most basic way to put it, is that the back foot lifts off the floor when he throws it. And this is because he's trying to really punch through the target, and he's shifting his weight off the floor from his back foot onto his lead foot, and he's trying to push through the target, particularly against the guy who's moving backwards. That's when it's the biggest problem, when he's chasing a guy. And when he'll throw that shot, that back foot comes off the floor, and what happens is he shifts all his weight onto the lead leg. Now, the problem with that is twofold, or threefold. First and foremost, when you're shifting all your weight onto your front foot, you are now committed onto that front foot. In other words, if I miss and he wants to counter me, I'm not in a position where I can then roll with a shot or pull back or duck under a shot or, catch a shot and then come back with a counter. There's nothing I can do. I'm a sit and duck. I'm in that moment. That's the first problem. You are susceptible to being countered. The second problem that you have is that when he really launches into it and he's chasing you, not only will that back foot come off the floor, it will come forward. He'll shift. But he's not shifting with a pattern behind it. It's not like a move where he's trying to cut off the ring like Golovkin often does, like I did with Kell Brook when I showed you the preview video back then, whereby he's using that right foot to cut across the ring and cut off the exit. That's not what he's doing here. It's because of a shift of balance. So what happens is that back foot comes next to the front foot and he ends up squaring up. Now, the problem with that is that he then gets countered, he gets hit, and then before he can then instantly throw another shot back, he has to reset. His feet have to readjust to get him back into the right sort of stance to enable him to punch. So number one, you're susceptible to the counter. Number two, you need an extra moment to reset. This is particularly dangerous if an opponent pivots out and you have to turn with him. Now you're all over the place. Now you really need extra time to reset, and you're also off balance as you're trying to pivot off that lead foot to adjust. The reason that this happens, let's talk about the why, not just what's happening. The reason that this happens is because against the southpaw, Ryan Garcia likes to have his lead foot inside the lead foot of the opponent. Now, one of the cliches that you always hear about in boxing is if you're fighting a southpaw, you should try and get your lead foot on the outside of the other person's lead foot. This is true to an extent, right? But there are some times where there are moments where that's not necessarily what you want. The reason you do that is because you want to line up your backhand, your powerful right hand, with his center line, with his chin. So that if I'm here, so that's the center line, right? Here's the camera in the center. As you can see, it's not quite lined up with the center of my body. Okay, here's the center of my body. I'm about this distance away from the center. If I want to throw a right hand from here, my right hand has to travel across my body. I'm having to twist across. So there's more of a distance to cover. If I'm lined up with the right shoulder with the camera, there isn't as much of a distance to cover. It's a straight line. So as I step out with that left hand and I line up my right shoulder with the center line, there's less distance to cover, which means not only do I have to overreach, I get from A to B more quickly. Additionally to that, something that I've spoken about before on this channel, there is a psychological, I guess you could say, trick of the mind. It's how effectively a human being reads movement and adjusts. When movement is coming across your face in any way, when it's moving across, your brain registers more quickly than when something is coming directly at you. This is why cars need brake lights when they're in front of you. If a car's going to brake in front of you, the first thing you notice is not that the car has halted. The first thing you notice is the red flash of light telling you he's hit his brakes. Because your brain won't react quickly enough at high speed for you to stop. If you're going at high speed and you're not at a great enough distance, 2 chevrons, as they say here in the UK, when you're on a motorway, if you're not as great enough distance, you'll hit into the back of him. Whereas when he's moving across you, when a car's jumping out across you, you're going to notice that movement more quickly, right? So it's a psychological trick of the mind as well. Well, with Ryan Garcia, because he is so left-hand dominant, he doesn't necessarily need to get his right hand, or he doesn't want to get his right hand in line with your center line. He's happy to have his left hand in line with your center line. So he doesn't mind having his lead foot inside your lead foot, particularly because he's so rangy at the weight. So even if you try to come across and line your backhand up with his backhand, his lead hand, he will fancy it to land more quickly than yours. So as you try to commit to a power punch, you're the one moving into big shots. That's fine. I get that. I understand that by breaking that rule, it works for him. But if you are then going to throw your right hand, you don't want to be in that position where it's traveling across you and you've got to lift your back leg off to reach him. So at that point, that's when your lead foot, you don't have to have it exclusively on the outside of the opponent's lead foot, but he's got to find a way to work that lead foot to the outside to be able to close that range to line up the right hand so he doesn't have to overreach. Anthony Joshua in the past used to make somewhat of a similar error, not too much, but you used to hear Robert McCracken often say to him when he was on a bag, don't lean over that lead foot. Don't lean over that lead foot. I've seen training footage of this because he wanted him to be standing upright. Throw your right hand like a laser beam and bring it back. Your rotation is here and then you're coming back. Think of it like a push and a pull. Ryan shouldn't necessarily think about how to push through the target of the right hand. He should be focusing on how to pull that left shoulder back. By pulling the left shoulder back, he's going to launch the right hand. That's one method, a little psychological trick you can use to stop doing that. Instead of trying to launch your back foot to launch the right hand, pull your front shoulder. You understand? That's your rotation rather than that being your rotation. It's just an example now. But the point is, if he's going to create that angle to step on the outside, it's not as simple as, okay, let me just step on the outside. These are high level stuff. So you need to offer a distraction to set that up. And this is one of the problems that he has, that although he's got a really nice jab, when a guy's moving backwards, he can sometimes underutilize that jab. He's got to start using throwaway jabs. He's got to just start touching a little bit more, varying it from head to body. Because if everything doesn't have to be a fast ball, sometimes dropping a slow ball just to blind the guy. The minute it comes into his eyes and he can't see you, the minute that jab comes there, I can then change the angle, and by the time I've moved my hand away, I'm away from where I was before. These are little things he's got to work on, varying the jab to create new angles. Because against Tank Davis, who's a very explosive southpaw, who can move around the ring and be very sudden, he may struggle, Tank, to be getting close to you. And as you're chasing him around, you're having a lot of success, you're thinking everything's going brilliantly well, and all of a sudden you overreach with that right hand, he counters you, and that's all she wrote potentially. Even when he dropped Fortuna today, at one point when he had him near the ropes, near the turnbuckle, he got clipped with a shot of his own as he threw the right hand. He got clipped with a hook as he was throwing it. You want to iron out these errors when you're fighting a guy like Tank. But listen, I don't want to sound like I'm ragging on him and putting him down. I thought it was a really good performance against a guy who's been at the highest level, albeit a man who only had 7 weeks preparation. Let's be honest here. So he wasn't necessarily in the best shape, and a body shot did drop him at one point and things like that. But nonetheless, he looked imposing, he looked devastating, he looked good, Ryan. But this one big error has to be addressed before he fights a guy like Tank Davis. Let me know what you think, ladies and gents. Don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe button, and notifications button. Thanks for watching. Take care. God bless.